The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Weiner, Program Manager of Education and Practice at the Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health. Thank you for joining us for today's ASPPH Presents webinar, Student Services Spotlight, Conversations about Orientation. Today's webinar will be 1 hour in length. We will begin with a short introduction of our presenters, followed by their presentations, allowing time after each presentation for a few questions, and concluding with additional time for questions and discussion. This webinar is part of the 2018 ASPPH Presents series. A few housekeeping items of note. While you are in listen-only mode and your lines have been muted, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the question box. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the ASPPH website in the archived webinar section soon. All registrants will receive an email with a link to the posted recording and slides when they are available. Additionally, this webinar has been approved for 1 hour of CPH continuing education credit. After today's webinar, you should be able to describe new orientation strategies being used at peer institutions and identify opportunities to help your orientation evolve. We are pleased to have with us today our speakers. Brittany Romanson currently serves as the Director of Student Life at Emory University's Rollins School of Public Health. In this role, she directs the strategic planning, development, and implementation of public health student engagement programming for 1,200 graduate professional students focusing on transition, development, and mental health and wellness. Previously, she worked as a research associate for the Georgia Health Policy Center, focusing on the evaluation of long-term support services and implementing a health policy certificate program for legislators. Our second presenter, Erin Schneider, currently serves as the Director of Student Affairs at Texas A&M School of Public Health. In this role, she provides resources and services to support the academic, professional, and personal growth of undergraduate and graduate students in the school's public health and health administration programs. This year, she was named a Fish Camp namesake, a prestigious honor at Texas A&M in which she will serve as a mentor for over 150 incoming freshmen this fall. And rounding out our group of presenters today, Dr. Missy Smothers is an assistant professor and director of academic services at the University of North Texas Health Science Center. She has worked professionally in the field of higher education for over 15 years. Currently, she works with a dedicated and experienced team of higher education and public health professionals, and her main responsibilities include the success and retention of students, advising graduate certificate and public health professional option and non-degree seeking students, serving as a care team representative, teaching the professional and academic development course, managing facilitation of the MPH practice experience, providing faculty and staff orientation and training, and a number of other important initiatives she's involved with. Thank you all for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter, Brittany Romanson.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. This is Brittany Romanson. As Sarah mentioned, I'm the Director of Student Life for Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University. And one of those duties, I manage orientation, much like I'm sure a bunch of you on the call right now. So I'm just going to be giving you a brief overview of what Rollins does for our MPH, MSPH orientation. So just a high-level overview for our basic orientation. We have about 530 students from over 6 departments, and it begins the week before classes and ends a day before classes begins. So our classes begin on a Wednesday, so we will begin the Wednesday before, and we'll run that Thursday, run that Friday, and then come back on that Monday for another orientation session, and then that Tuesday our students have off to prep for their classes. And just in the overall landscape of it, we do have additional orientation sessions going on. The week before new student orientation, we have 3 days of international student orientation, and the international students must attend both orientations. Additionally, those students that are within our executive MPH program have a separate orientation, separate from our new student orientation. They have online components in addition to a 1-day in-person orientation before they have their on-campus weekend. So before orientation starts, we're already chatting with our students. We have an admitted student portal, which is a website dedicated to all things orientation, all things onboarding for our students. So think additional scholarships for international students to apply for, onboarding procedures for enrollment, basic orientations, a monthly timeline, like don't forget your parking permit application, things of that nature. In addition to that, I send 5 emailed communications over the course of 4 months, and the first 2 go to the student's personal email, and then when we have our mass matriculation and they get their school email, we transfer the communications over to solely their Emory email address to get the students used to checking that email. In addition, I hop on Facebook Live sessions, and we have class of pages. So this year would be the class of 2020, and our students register on that. And I'll pop in for little informal discussions. I'll have my grad assistants do it. I'll have a couple of other students just jump on, really informal, maybe an hour during the lunch hour, for students to ask some of the questions that they might want to ask but don't want to ask in a professional email. So like, what do I wear? What is orientation like? Things of that. In addition to all of those communications, we also do webinars over the summer. So I do student life webinars, some with our minority student groups, in addition to an LGBT life webinar that speaks about LGBT life in resources in Atlanta on Emory's campus, and in addition to at Rollins School of Public Health. And we do an Office of Accessibility Services webinar that discusses how to register yourself with OAS. And we do an Honor and Conduct Code webinar that discusses Honor and Conduct Code, and the students have to do a quiz at the end, and it's loaded into Cascade, and we do check by the time of orientation that all students have completed it and have received a satisfactory grade for that. Career Development does a number of webinars as well, including resume design and things of that nature to get them straight away thinking about applying for, say, work study positions. And additionally, our certificate programs do a webinar as well for the students over the summer. So the basic layout, as I talked about for new student orientation, we have 4 days. So I'll go through each day, just again, another high-level overview. So day 1 is really our mandatory session. It's think the basic orientation. We have the department meeting, so the students begin the day by going to their departments, meeting their ADAPs, which are associate directors of academic programs, things like academic advisor, faculty, other students. We have our mandatory Title IX and Respect Program seminar. In addition, we have career development sessions. We have 3 sessions this year, one directly for students directly from undergraduate, the other is from 1 to 3 years from undergraduate, and the other is 3+ years from undergraduate. And each of those sessions is tailored specific to that student population, depending where they are in their career process. So day 2 is really an optional day for the students, but it does have a vast amount of information during it. So we do have a lot of students come to it. We start the day with information technology, how to sign on to our Citrix system, your laptop, changing your Emory email alias. We have a cultural humility workshop for the students. I also run a health and wellness panel with all of the resources and stakeholders across campus, like Office of Accessibility Services, Counseling and Psychological Services, our Student Intervention Services, Emory Police Department, things of that nature for students to really get to know and put a face to the name of the office. So they see us in person before they get into crisis. This year we'll be piloting a second-year student panel dubbed Ask Us We've Been There. The students really wanted to hear more from second-year students. We also have financial aid drop-in hours, and then our career development does an improv and networking workshop. They bring in a local improv theater to do improv with the students, and then in the evening, alumni come and the students get to practice their networking skills. Then the third day is CDC Day. CDC Day is a fun one for all of us. So the purpose of this day is to offer an overview of the field of public health in the context of community development, really highlighting the importance of collaboration across disciplines. So students really gain an understanding about setting values into action from that public health framework. It also is a time for our dean to address the entire incoming student body. And we have a faculty and alumni panel. In addition, our students have an all-school reading that they do. Last year was Merchants of Doubt. The year before was And the Band Played On. So it's that faculty and alumni panel and the keynote speakers during CDC Day really hone in on the topics of those books and really show how the topics of books go across the discipline from behavioral scientists to epidemiology, from health education to biostatistics, just really touching on everything in public health. From a management point of view for CDC Day, I think, as you can all imagine, it's quite a feat to get 530 students over to the CDC. So we start that security process with CDC in January. So we need a sponsoring organization, and then the international students also need to complete additional forms. And we have tier check-in processes. We have to walk over the students in groups and just really get them all back. One note about CDC Day, our students really get excited about it because they think they're really touring the CDC, maybe putting on hazmat suits. That's really not it. The CDC has a very large auditorium that we can use and get everyone in the same room, And then after our presentations and our panels and our discussions, the students do have the opportunity for a self-guided tour at the CDC Museum. So our last day of orientation is Volunteers Day, and that includes a organization fair. So as part of our orientation, each incoming student participates in a morning service around Metro Atlanta. The students really work with local organizations, and it focuses on poverty, homelessness, chronic disease, environmental conservation, things like that. The goal of Volunteers Day is to provide public health students with an opportunity to really learn while doing. So our students really begin to think about how to tackle issues that adversely affect thousands of people in Atlanta. So for us, really ideally, the students stay connected to these and other local organizations throughout their MPH program and to complete course projects, maybe their practicum, or other just volunteer opportunities with these organizations. So over the past 11 years that we've been doing this program, Rollins has sent over 5,000 students across Atlanta to over 40 organizations. And for each organization has 2 site leaders, and those site leaders are really second-year students, PhD students, faculty, staff, alumni. So it's a whole school and Rollins Community Day for us. We really do enjoy continuing our partnerships with these local organizations. And for this day too, again, from a managing perspective of it, we get donations from local organizations. We have Flying Biscuit provide us a discounted breakfast. We get discounts and gift cards for sunscreen, bug spray, drinks and snacks, everything that you could think of. We try to get a donation for this large event. And this picture here, 530 students, 11 charter buses. You'll see everyone, all the students, incoming students wear one color shirt, and then the site leaders wear a different color shirt so we can see them everywhere on campus and across Atlanta. And so just almost wrapping it up, just some additional considerations and logistics to think about when managing orientation. So for staffing, it's myself, and I have 2 graduate assistants that I'm actually in the process of hiring for this summer's orientation. We also have ASPPH ambassadors, so it's in our ambassador program. We rely heavily on them and Rollins Student Government Association to do hands-on for the day. And then again, as you see this note, it's all hands on deck during orientation. Our Office of Admissions Student Services, our Associate Directors of Academic Programs, all of our partners across campus really come together and volunteer their time to ensure that this is a very smooth and wonderful orientation. So just notes on registration and sessions. We do use Slate for registration and check-in. I also use Slate for communications. This year, we're testing out a tiered check-in by department. So for those department meetings, 3 of them start at 9:30 and 3 of them start at 10. So we'll be working on having the students in each department check in at a different time. Last year, we had everyone check in at once, and it got a little bit too tight into the room. So we're going to try a new thing out. And then we also have optional evening events specifically for student networking. These includes our Rollins Student Government Association will host an event. Our Return Peace Corps volunteers will do an event with the Return Peace Corps community and the Atlanta area RPCV group. And then additionally, any of our 18 charter student organizations will put on different student organization sponsor events. So the students really get that networking aspect, and we don't build it into our orientation. The students really do it on our own and then promote that separately from it. And then finally, for an evaluation, we always do an evaluation. That's how we see what works, what doesn't work. We do it 1 week post-orientation. It's a survey with SurveyMonkey, Likert scales, open-ended questions. It's emailed to all incoming students. The results are then distributed to the departments, any of our partners who were holding a session, and reviewed by myself and others in student life. And the edits are really made every year to accommodate the students. I come from a behavioral sciences and health ed background, so evaluation is really one of my favorite things to do. So the program will look different slightly every year just to accommodate everything that we've seen in our evaluations. And that's what I have. If you have any questions for me outside of this webinar, please feel free to reach me at the email address below. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Wow, that sounds incredible. I'm going to remind everyone that you may submit questions at any time throughout the webinar by using the question box. And Brittany, one burning question before we move on to the next presenter. Someone has asked for you to just elaborate a little bit more about the cultural humility workshop.
Yeah, of course. So last year it was a social justice workshop, and it was put on by our social justice student organization. And this year I had a couple of students approach me, and they approached me, I'd say maybe in October for this year's orientation. So I loved the initiative, and they really wanted to do a cultural humility workshop. So those 2 students are really working on finding panelists, doing different workshop ideas, and I give them the logistics and the times. They have the auditorium. They really wanted to have all students be able to participate. So our auditorium holds 250 students. So there'll be 2 sessions of this cultural humility workshop, and then there'll be a session during International Student Orientation. So right now we're still in the planning stages of it, but it's really put on by our students, and we have a bunch of the sessions go on throughout the school year by Students for Social Justice, the Association of Black Public Health Students, our Rollins Student Government Association did an advocacy workshop. So this will just be a taste of cultural humility, really in the framework of community engaged learning, and then go into more of a series throughout the school year. So I don't have many specifics on it right now because, like I said, we're still in the planning stations. I actually just met earlier this week with the 2 students planning it just to go over some ideas that they have, and they'll be sending me a draft document of it in the coming weeks. So I'd be happy to share it if you want to email me, and I can provide it once it's solidified.
Thanks so much, Brittany.
Thank you.
All right, and now we're going to move on. Erin, you now have control.
Wonderful. Howdy, everybody. My name is Erin Schneider. I am Director of Student Affairs at Texas A&M School of Public Health. We are going through some significant changes this year with planning new student orientation. And so my PowerPoint's kind of directed more of the thought process that we're going through as we're revamping our strategy. And then towards the end of the presentation, I have handouts of what we used for an agenda last year, which will be modified this year, but then also a supplemental document that we use to help communicate with students on events and trainings coming up. So we'll have those as additional handouts for you guys as well. For the changes that we're going through with our orientation, it's multi-level. So without getting too complicated, our primary degree program is our Master's of Public Health program. And that one will bring in anywhere between 120 to 150 students every year. Overall, we have about a 400 graduate student body, and then we're looking at almost about 300 to 350 undergraduate students total for going into our fall enrollment. So we're growing like crazy. But with the MPH program in particular, our schools opted to go ahead and begin the new integrated core curriculum as set up by SEEF. And with that, what our faculty team has laid out is a new core curriculum that will take place primarily in the first fall term, but it actually starts a week and a half earlier than our traditional academic calendar here at Texas A&M. So we're having, again, to re-strategize of what used to be a full day orientation, now may be a combination of an online orientation or multiple modules, but then followed up by daily interactions, workshops, mixers, whatever it may be. We're still kind of going through that planning process that would take place the week of the first core curriculum course. So I'll show you a little bit more information as we get closer to that point. The other challenges that we face too is we have students not only here in College Station, but we also have an executive program in Houston. We have an online program, and then we also have a campus in McAllen, which is about 7 hours away. So from a logistical standpoint, we're trying to go through and make sure that we're meeting all these student needs, knowing that there may be some limitations of either content delivery or interactions to try to make it as equitable as possible for everybody. So I'll walk you through this process through these slides. Okay, so where to start? What we try to do is go through and really map out our student profile. And so looking at the demographics, particularly paying attention to that we're seeing an increased number of out-of-state students. And so when we're trying to help them just even physically arrive here in Bryan College Station, we don't have a very good mass transit system here in this community. And so it was kind of a light bulb going off one year where I had a student move down here from the East Coast who didn't have a vehicle, and then landed in Bryan College Station and realized we don't necessarily have public means to get to campus unless you're on our university bus route. So we're trying to be mindful of that. Same with our international students and their arrival, and trying to kind of ease the anxiety around that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit later. We also look at our students that are fresh out of college, how to keep that momentum and that energy starting a graduate program, but also mindful of our returning students or those that may have family or work obligations, particularly more so within our distance education program, and how to be mindful of their needs. And then also the use of technology. I mean, I can speak for myself, having completed this program over 10 years ago, and then seeing what we've evolved to now of helping our students with any computer requirements, giving that information to them outright so they can make sure that they're prepared with what they need, particularly for the distance education program students. We also, from a student profile, have quite a unique population of military veterans. Texas A&M is a very military-friendly university, and so we actually have 2 offices within the flagship university at Texas A&M that provide veteran services, both for matriculating into the university as well as for financial aid services. And so that's something that we've started establishing a partnership with them to help make that transition for our military veterans. As I mentioned, we have the MPH program. We also have the MHA program, the Master of Health Administration. We have 3 doctoral programs within a DRPH, and then we also have a PhD. Within the other degree programs, we have certificate students and non-degree seeking students. And I wanted to bring them into the conversation just because oftentimes as a non-degree seeking student, they may, for our case, have potentially been left out of either communications or onboarding. So we make sure that we include those certificate and non-degree seeking students in any upcoming trainings that we have. We invite them to orientation just so they can help with that transition to a graduate school curriculum as well. I mentioned our multiple campuses, and then for the onboarding process and communications, Brittany did a fabulous job talking about a communication strategy. We found that in the past, we would get an offer letter out to a student, we'd tell them all the required forms and not so fun paperwork they need to do, and then they wouldn't potentially hear from us again until July or August. So we've created a communication plan to, again, maintain that momentum and that excitement and that energy for communications that not only come out of our office, but also the dean, their departments, their academic advisors, that they'll have all those touch points throughout the summer. We also have an incoming Facebook group. It's private. That way we can monitor who's truly an incoming student to our program, but we actually have that monitored by current students that can help answer their questions. So that kind of helps ease the workload. And then our career services coordinator created an eCampus course, which is the platform that we use to provide all our curriculum as a Texas A&M student. That's just phenomenal. She has it set up where they can upload resumes so we can get a head start on that. She has previous presentations recorded. There's discussion forums in there that we now utilize as an onboarding process for our incoming students, and it's been a very good success so far. And then looking at resources and technology, just be open to where there may be, the expertise within your office and your school or your university, but capitalizing on what's in the community as well. So for us, we have phenomenal faculty and research experts here. My staff are very well prepared, but we're also managing the day-to-day logistics of orientation. So we absolutely utilize our flagship institution offices, be it their graduate and professional advising office. We have an international student services office that we've consulted and brought in with. We also use our visitors bureau. We found that for particularly international and out-of-state students aren't as familiar with this community, that they prepare packets for free that provide maps, what limited mass transit we have, but then information and coupon books on local stores and restaurants. So that's been very beneficial as well. And then from the technology standpoint, it's just recognizing what could be provided electronically versus in person when you get to the point of orientation and the day of. So I'll be honest, there's always challenges. There's always need for more time. The changing needs of students are changing constantly, not only with the change in our core curriculum and starting the academic year early, but we're also seeing changes in how students learn. Sometimes it's our traditional agenda for orientation, they felt bombarded with information. We're trying to incorporate more things that the students are actually involved in and more skill-based opportunities in our orientation. And then for communication, don't hesitate, just communicate with them. We learned an interesting way last year of streamlining communications with our advisors. We send them emails, but we found beneficial to have meetings with them as well to make sure they're getting that correspondence, because last year we had a department tell students they could miss our mandatory orientation to go to a TA training for another college. And we were able to help facilitate that conversation for our students to make sure they knew that ours was in fact precedence over the TA training, but was able to communicate with the other department, and they've now made accommodations for an additional training for our students later on, because we did recognize that having employment, particularly as a TA, was a priority for them, and able to make that accommodation for them worked out this year. And so things to consider: set your goals, solicit feedback, identify limitations, looking at existing resources, and navigating logistics. Those are all things that kind of set the precedent for where we're entering orientation this year. So I'm going to go through those quickly for the sake of time. So setting goals, think about what you want to accomplish at orientation. For us, we went and are having conversations now of, is this a way just to get information to the students? And so obviously talking about academic services, Title IX, plagiarism, graduate student expectations. We've incorporated opportunities for skill building where we're looking at doing a writing workshop this year, but we also previously incorporated a speaker on communication strategies and etiquette that we found very successful. Establishing rapport, both of your office and the staff in the school, and then forming networks. So think about ways of prioritizing. For us, we have a welcome reception that we always get very positive feedback from students, but we've also explored mixers and lunches and panels to help get information to students in kind of a different mindset. For feedback, we do a number of things. So we did focus groups over the past summer with some of our second year students or doctoral students further along in the program. That was very beneficial. We'll do individual student interviews informally, but to be able to, again, get feedback, particularly ways on preferred means of communication had been really helpful recently. Get information from your faculty. For us, you know, a constant challenge is the quality of writing, and so we're going to try to have that set up as a priority this year to really reinforce why it's so important to use library services and reference citation software and just our writing center on campus. The parking lot example is actually something that we use at orientation, so I'll show you an example of that. And then we also do a post survey that we will then distribute that information, just as Brittany said, to our academic offices and other partners within our orientation. The parking lot example is actually a really cool idea that I got from another workshop I attended last summer, where they actually have this image on large Post-it notes stuck throughout the walls in the room where we're doing orientation. And then the students actually have smaller Post-it notes on their table with a bucket of pens or markers, where at any point in time, if something comes up, they can make a comment on that Post-it, and when we get up for break, they'll actually go stick it on the large Post-it note, which is designated with these 4 quadrants. And so we ask them for feedback. We ask them if there's things that they have questions on and need to clarify, areas for improvement, and then you can see ideas for improvement. So that's kind of the idea of parking lot is for things in the future. The main point with this too is it's great to get the live feedback at orientation, but when you implement this, when we come back from break is where I'll have either the feedback or the ideas or some type of response for all the sticky notes I collected on those boards. So if it's a matter of it's too cold in the room, then we can recognize that we'll make adjustments to the AC. Or if they wanted more time on a particular topic, then that's where we, you know, thank them for that feedback and tell them how we'll incorporate that either into a later session or into a new orientation session. So something I wanted to share with you guys that takes very little effort, very minimal supplies, but a great way to have the students feel invested in your orientation process. And then for limitations, you know, there's always time, and that's not only for the time of planning, but for the day or the week of, knowing that there may be competing interests when you're getting all this feedback. So managing the workload effectively, and then the ability to provide services. I mean, if you find limitations in what your office can provide directly, obviously, definitely consider delegating. That's where we, again, located an individual who's an expert within communication strategies, and he's fantastic. And it's one of those that I wish I would have brought him in years ago, but he's part of our orientation agenda now. So think of places, too, that you can delegate or create those optional events or additional sessions further into the semester to help reinforce the topics that you're presenting at orientation. In my last few slides, utilize existing resources. So we use our current students, not only just for logistics and planning in the day of, which is great to have those additional hands, but we also have them as part of a panel, and it works out wonderfully. I give them very minimal prompts. I tell them I'm going to ask them 2 questions of introduce yourself, if you're part of any student organization, what they wish they would have known the first year, and what resources have been most valuable to them. And then after that, we open it up for Q&A. And really the only rule I give them is don't repeat each other. They can do it briefly, but for the sake of time, if they agree, say they agree with that previous answer, and then we allocate more time. And then I actually have 2 students moderating the panel, and it's worked out beautifully, because oftentimes they'll reiterate things that we said before, but when students hear it from their peers, it really sticks with them. So I highly, highly recommend incorporating students into your orientation. We have a lot of faculty and staff help volunteer. We're really thankful for that. And what I'd like to kind of reinforce this too is we always have an open invitation to our faculty who want to attend orientation. I invite faculty and our administrators every year, but I do a special invite to our new faculty. And I've had some take me up on the offer and come to our new student orientation just so they can see kind of the different side or the other side of coming into the university. But they know now too what those expectations are that we lay out for our students at orientation. And then, as I mentioned, utilize the offices if you have those available to you locally between your school, the university, and the community, particularly places where you may be able to get donations for door prizes or coupons for local restaurants are really, really beneficial and help energize the room. And then navigating logistics, we use event planning templates that I'm happy to share to help kind of lay all these out. Again, we're working with challenges this year with starting a week and a half early, but we'll make it work. The budget's ever evolving, so stay on top of that, staffing and the agenda. So I'm going to try to switch over to 2 documents really quick so you can see what we used in the past. And if I can't figure this out, I'll ask Sarah for help.
Sure. What are you trying to show?
Yeah. The new student events document.
Sure. So those are both available as handouts.
Wonderful.
In the handout section, they can actually open them
Okay.
in the PDF.
Yeah, so I'll just tell y'all briefly kind of what we did. In the events handout, we actually outlined all the required events the students need to go to, and right now this is provided to them as a PDF via email. There is some of this information we want to get on web, but right now we outline day type, location, an overview of the event, and the point of contact. Oh, thank you, Sarah. With that, you can go through and see we put where you need a RSVP, if it's for a particular subset of group, students or a cohort. And then we also go through when the department orientations are scheduled. We do a care assessment that I think actually may get phased out. It's measuring critical thinking, but I'm not sure if that's part of our assessment process with the school anymore. And then we put optional training. So we actually do both in-person and online training for eCampus and Adobe Connect, which is our means of having our classes available is through eCampus, and our Adobe Connect is often what our faculty use for online classes. And then we work with our local librarian with the university to do a library training so they know how to use our databases, RefWorks, all that good stuff. So I have that in here as a handout, and then the other handout I provided was our detailed agenda. It doesn't look very pretty. This is the one that we use mainly for logistics, but this is where you can see just kind of a high-level idea of a single-day orientation example where you'll get from each title of what we're trying to accomplish, but looking at Title IX, plagiarism, academic expectations, the group strategies, and communication strategies, excuse me. We also have career services come in and do a really great exercise with our students. And then we talk about the resources needed. And then for A&M University, we're very proud of our tradition, so they get a little warm up on that. And then we do a welcome reception either the day before or the day of, depending on what we have going on with our schedule this week. So this is just one example for you guys to refer to. That was a chunk of time. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, or you'll have my contact information afterwards. We are expanding on our international orientation, but for the sake of time, I'll hand it over to Misty, and then I'm happy to share that information after today as well. But thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much, Erin. And just to remind people to please continue to submit your questions via the question box, and we'll address them at the end. Misty, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Misty Smethers. I'm an assistant professor and director of academic services at UNT Health Science Center in the School of Public Health. Today, I'm going to focus on our pre-orientation materials and then our online orientation. We do have an on-campus orientation for our cohort students, but I will not be focusing on that today. If you can see a little bit about us, we are located in Fort Worth, Texas. We have an MPH in 4 different concentrations. The online orientation focuses on our professional options and our graduate certificate students. We have a master's in health administration, an MS, PhD in public health sciences, and the dual degree. We have roughly 130 online students and then 154 cohort students. For our pre-orientation, this is handled by our Director of Admissions. Her name is Beth Hargrove. She has student ambassadors that are assigned when students are admitted. They will reach out to the students to interact with them, answer any questions that they have. We have what's called My HSC Day, and my next slide will go into detail about what we do at My HSC Day. Obviously, we follow up with personal and phone calls and emails. We also do Twitter chats, webinars, and we have a Facebook group. All of this is pre-orientation for all of our students. Our My HSC Day You can see here we have an event where we work with our University Division of Student Affairs, and then we also have our program directors of each of our programs come in and meet with the students. Our deans meet with them and introduce themselves, and then you can see if you look towards the afternoon, we have student presentations that talk about classroom projects. We have an example faculty presentation so they can get an idea of what our classroom experience is like. We have an example of a co-curricular IPE experience as well. Our co-curricular experience we call our interludes. Those occur on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for a 3-hour time block, and that is where they have professional and academic development activities. We have an alumni coffee hour, and that's where we have our alum come in and give feedback and tips and things that they wish they had known as a student and want to provide information for our incoming students. We do a campus tour, and then we take our students on a bus tour of Fort Worth so that they can get an idea of what Fort Worth is, the different transportation that we have available, where they may like to live. We also have during this time a relocation fair. This is a university level relocation fair, so there are other students from the other schools present, but this helps students provide housing as well as get an idea of where a variety of other places are available, such as salons and those type things. We then take all of our students to a off-campus dinner, and this is where we have our students and their families. If they have brought them to My HST Day, we give them an overview and just get to know them a little bit better so that they can get to know us, and then we return to campus. One of the things that I wanted to focus on is our connection piece, and when we connect, our My HST Day happens after the student is admitted, but before orientation, so it's a way that we can connect with them outside of just emails and phone calls or Facebook. We have the student ambassadors that are assigned to work with them and answer any questions they may have. That also occurs after admission and before orientation. We have Facebook groups that happens after My HST Day, so we've already gotten to see them face to face, and then we connect with them so that they can ask questions. New this year, we are dividing our students, all of our students, up into student teams that will have a first and a second year of a variety of programs combined into an academic team through the Office of Academic Services. And then they will be assigned to one of the graduate assistants that work in my office. So I have 8 graduate assistants. So each graduate assistant will roughly have 4 academic teams that they will be in communication with from now through on-campus orientation. So that way that we have that connection over the summer. And you will notice that admission starts and then I take over after My HST Day, but there is that back and forth between asking admissions related questions and making sure all the paperwork has been submitted as they are still transitioning into the academic services, which is the current student role. Now, with online orientation, these are pictures of obviously many of our on-campus students, but how do you make the online student feel like they are welcome when they are not physically present? How are you relating to students so that they know that we are here to help them, and what services do they have as an online student? These are all of the university departments that have graciously created videos and interactive sessions for our online students. And I will show you an example from financial aid in just one moment, but all of these departments are presenting in our online orientation. It also allows our students to have something to reference if they watch it and they've completed it for purposes of the checking the box for orientation, but they need to refer back to it later, they can do so. This is a brief snippet of our financial aid video.
UNT Health Science Center Financial Aid Office, we would like to welcome you to our online orientation. If at any point during this presentation you have a question, feel free to contact us at finaid@unthsc.edu. Our primary form of contact with you will be email, so please read them all carefully. The subject line will always read UNTHSC Financial Aid, following with the subject of the email. Also, Add our email to your safe list so it doesn't get filtered into a junk or spam folder. Let's get started. We want you to familiarize yourself with our website. You can find it by going to www.unthsc.edu, clicking on the students link, selecting current students.
So that's a brief snippet of many of the videos that we have from a variety of departments. Our online orientation is through Canvas, and one of the new things that I asked our deans, department chairs, and advisors this year were to create casual videos so that students could see them and start making that connection, not just via email, but be able to see them and get to know them a little bit better. So here's a snippet from one of our department chairs.
Hi, welcome. My name is Scott Walters. I'm a professor and chair in the Health Behavior and Health Systems Department. I want to welcome you to the program and just briefly introduce myself. I'm mainly responsible for the classes that are offered in MOC, in BOC, and in HMAP. So all the way from choosing which classes are going to be offered to what instructors are going to teach the course, what courses are needed for what particular degrees. So there's a lot of record keeping, paperwork, monitoring how the courses are going, and then, of course, following up with students to see how their experience has been. A typical day for me involves maybe, I would say, a third of my time is just pretty much solving problems for people. So all the way from monitoring how things are going to making sure that people have the things that they need to get their job done. So it can be things as simple as, hey, the computer in my classroom doesn't work, to the timesheet system isn't working, to I need this paperwork and I'm not sure where to go for it. So it is a lot more like a information desk than I ever imagined when I stepped into this role about a year ago. Another third involves doing my own research.
So that's a snippet of, again, one of our department chairs so that students can relate to them. The other thing that we do is we have our faculty advisors, and they create a paragraph and a picture, which will, in addition to interacting via the chat and Zoom feature for our online students. So this is an example just from our website because I couldn't log into our Canvas and let you see that access, but here's an example of what we provide for our students so they get a little bit of background about our faculty, about their advisors, so that they know what questions to ask them and how they can be helpful to the student. Finally, the graduate assistant connection, I mentioned they will be divided into academic teams, and each will be assigned to one of the graduate assistants in the Office of Academic Services. This picture is Crystal, one of my graduate assistants, and she will have a team of four different academic teams that she will help answer questions with throughout from now through August. And again, we will also have the chat and Zoom feature for academic services where they can ask questions at any time via Canvas. All of this is somewhat new and has been overhauled for this year. And the way that we decided to do that, we do evaluations after my HSC. We have an orientation evaluation, and we also have a student satisfaction survey that is distributed to students in addition to feedback that we've just received during any of our events or immediately after the fact. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Misty. And then here's her information if you would like to follow up with her outside of this webinar. I want to remind everyone just one more time that you can submit questions for any of our speakers, and we're going to address them now. So thanks again, Brittany, Aaron, and Misty. And we have about 10 minutes for questions, so that's great. The first question for all. Do students who attended your institution as an undergrad provide you with feedback that they already know lots of this since they completed undergrad at your institution?
I can take that question first, and then people can follow. So for us, I haven't seen that question before, but talking to students, I was concerned about that. But something for us, for our students to understand is that they'll be interacting with their partners in a different way. So we're all on the same campus. Emory's campus is pretty small. I can get to the other side where undergraduate is in about 10 minutes. But it is a shift because the students are now walking across campus to use campus partners, but we haven't received much of that information before. And when we do have these sessions, we really talk about interacting at a different level as a graduate student. Now, our Respect program, we had to meet with them to change some of their case examples. Some of them were very undergraduate focused, like if you were at a frat party, our students don't go to fraternity parties. So we did change a lot of the scenarios to make sure it had that graduate student focus and make sure students understand they might be interacting with partners at a different level.
At Texas A&M, we had it more so with our master students transitioning to the doctoral program, where initially we'd take it by a case-by-case basis, but we'd actually have them come back just because our orientation has been evolving significantly each year over the past few years. With the undergrad students, that program started about 3 years ago for us, so we're actually seeing our new graduates out of that program now. And luckily, we haven't gotten too much pushback from them. We focus so much more on graduate student expectations and helping make that transition that if we market it the right way, we're seeing them more eager to participate in our orientation. So luckily, we haven't had to do too much conversation beyond just showing them all the things that they could look forward to with this new orientation, new degree program. So for us, it's just a marketing strategy.
And then we are a graduate-only campus, so we have not had that question.
Thank you. This next question, regarding My HSC Day, how many students attend and how many of them are local to Fort Worth?
For my HSC Day, we had roughly 38 students attend, and I would say the majority are not necessarily local to Fort Worth, but local to the area, meaning they may be Fort Worth, Dallas, Waco, so close enough to drive. We did offer students who were out of state, if they were interested in coming, we did offer to pay for their travel if they were interested in attending. So we did secure that, and we had roughly 4 students who came from out of state.
Great, thank you. For those of you with online orientation options, is online orientation for students required? If not, what do you do to help encourage their participation? And also, is the online orientation synchronous or asynchronous?
Our online orientation is required, and so what we do is basically we put a hold on their account to make sure that in terms of registration so that they do go through the orientation module. Our students can come in every 8 weeks, so our orientation module is open basically every time, and we just have to update that every 8 weeks. There are times where we have had a little snafu where we forgot to update it for the new 8-week session, but we do try to make a few things general so that we don't run into any issues having to update it in terms of dates and that type of thing.
Great. Thank you.
At Texas A&M, we do have it as a requirement for our distance education program students. Right now, it is a live orientation, but I offer 3 to 4 times, and typically there'll be sessions offered during the lunch hour and those after business hours. And then for any student who can't participate in one of those online sessions, I do just an individual phone call with them. Our online program numbers are relatively small, so it's definitely a manageable number for me to be able to do the one-on-one if we need to.
Okay. I think this question is for Brittany. How many students join the Facebook Live sessions that you offer?
So with the Facebook Live sessions, the first time we did it, we had like 5 students, and it is quite awkward to just sit there and see yourself on camera talking to nobody. But I've been doing it now for, I think this will be our 3rd year. We usually net about 100 students just on the session with us asking questions, but it is recorded and Facebook leaves it on there and on the Facebook wall and records it. So we usually have about 1,000 views, generally around there for each video that we go on there for.
Sounds worthwhile. This next question I think is for Aaron. For the pre-orientation, the students that monitor and answer questions, do you provide them formal training?
I may need clarification. Oh, for the ones that participate as our current students answering questions, is
Yes.
I'm assuming that's in reference to, okay. Some of them we do help give them prompts. We have things that we just call canned responses. It's often responses that we actually use in like the Career Eco virtual fairs, where, we don't necessarily expect our students to know the ins and outs of everything with our program. And so we do have responses already prompted of how to navigate getting an assistantship. And so we have kind of a basic blurb on that, but then the student, we encourage them, our current student, we encourage them to add their own advice and recommendations as well. So for some things, we do have like a short kind of FAQs list that our students can pull from, but then yeah, they can add their own tips and tricks. I tell them as long as they're not going against university policy. For example, A&M parking permits are prime around here, and every now and then they'll say, oh yeah, go to Craigslist and go buy your permit. And we say, no, you got to go through the proper channels. But that's few and far between that we have those issues. We always try to identify students that represent the school well, but then they're also diverse. So we have international students, male, female, in-state, out-of-state, those that came from Texas A&M, those that didn't. So we try to also have students that are represented that can answer, a good majority of the questions across the board. But they know we're available to help answer, and our office staff serve as moderators. So we actually have a paragraph that lays out the ground rules of how that Facebook group is used. And then if we need to chime in, we check it periodically as well to help.
Great, thank you. This next question, Misty, are ambassadors one-to-one with students, or are they grouped?
They are grouped to a certain number of incoming students. So they roughly have about, I'd say about 20 or so students per ambassador.
Great. I think this question is for Brittany. Who set up your student portal? Is it a homegrown program or a program you bought or contracted out?
So it's actually part of Emory's website. Last year and the years before, we just had it with password protected because we do have our visit day information on there and whatnot. This year, it's just a part of the website, but we just provide students with the link. So you can't get to it from Emory's or Rollins website. You would have that link, but it's just a basic template for a website. It's not as cool as it sounds. I think it's not as interactive. It's just basically a website for students. So we are thinking about changing it. We don't know what that's looking like yet. Our communications manager right now is on maternity leave, but when she gets back, we'll talk about what works this summer and then make sweeping changes for next summer.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. This question is asking, what are some tips for engaging current students as student ambassadors or getting them involved in the orientation? And what incentives do you provide incentives?
So we don't provide any incentives for our students. I'm the staff advisor for all 18 student organizations, so they all know me already, and I'm just frank with them and say, I can't do this without y'all. Really, please help me. I do have that conversation very early, so I let them know starting in their board meetings in January when orientation is, because our classes don't start for the Wednesday after orientation starts. So some of our students might not be here. And I just say, you've been in these shoes before, just really help people out. So they do have to plan a lot with here who's not. A lot of our students do global field experiences. In our ambassador program, again, it's a lot of pre-planning and just letting them know that we can't do it without them. And the students get free food when they help us out in terms of just orientation food. So that's a big thing for Rollins. I mean, so much so that they have a Facebook group for free food at Rollins that our students sign on to. But again, I'm just really frank with our students and let them know that I can't do this without them. And I've never had an issue with the students not wanting to participate.
Great.
Texas A&M, it started out that same way. We just had students that were eager to volunteer and give back. So for us, it was the free meals during the day, and then we market it too as this is great experience that they can document on their resume. And then now we've kind of evolved it to where we'll get them a polo shirt and a name tag, and that way they have that recognition to know that they're standing out among their peers as those taking that leadership position. And so we have some that we pick every single year, particularly our doctoral students who've been here for a number of years. But yeah, we have quite a few students that are always just eager to give back to our university, and we tell them how much we appreciate it. And I usually give them a thank you card and, a token of thanks of, a mug or tumbler or something that we're able to provide to them as just, a thank you.
And then our ambassadors, they typically try to volunteer, and it's usually fairly competitive application process. We don't pay our ambassadors, but they do receive multiple polo shirts for different events, a name tag. We've given them, actually, all of our students have gotten Yeti cups because of our coffee machine that we provide for the cohort students. And then they either get a Padfolio or a business card holder. This is separate than our orientation leaders. Our orientation leaders are actually paid through our Division of Student Affairs, so they are interviewed. All students are interviewed, but then our orientation leaders also get paid, and then obviously the graduate assistants who have the academic teams in my office are paid as a graduate assistant.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brittany, Aaron, and Missy for sharing all these great tips for orientation. I want to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded and it will be available on the webinar event page on the ASPPH website soon. You will receive an email when that is posted. And also just a reminder, we have other ASPPH webinars coming up, so please register and attend. Thanks again to all our speakers and have a wonderful rest of your Monday.